Hey everybody, welcome to Sunday, June 6th. So glad that you could be here today. Doing things a little different, going for a little walk in the park, a little walk around. Um, we're going to open in prayer. I'm not going to close my eyes because I want to see where we're going. But we're going to open prayer and then we're going to go to Mark chapter 2, verses 23 to Mark chapter 3, verses 6. So if you could join me in prayer, we'll just open a prayer and then we'll take it from there. Father God, thank you for today, and thank you for nature, and thank you for the parks, and thank you that it's such a beautiful day today, and that we can be here together, even though we're not physically together. We can be here because of technology that you have allowed to happen. So Father, I thank you so much for all of that. I thank you for the ability to be walking. I thank you for the ability to be able to just be with each other through the video. So Father, as we think of those that are sick, Lord, you know who's on our minds. You know who's on our hearts, and that we long for healing, and we long for people to get rid of the diseases or whatever is hurting them. Lord, I ask right now that you would be with them. And Lord, as we go through the names of the people in our minds and our hearts, Lord, that you would hear our prayers. Father, thank you for the leadership that you place above us. Lord, you said we are to honor them. We are to make sure that as long as they are not going against or contravening your word and your commandments to us, that we are to obey them. So Father, I pray that you would give us the ability, the grace and the mercy, even when we may not agree with them, we may not understand, or we may even downright think that they're not doing a very good job. Lord, you put them in authority over us. So I thank you for them, and I ask that you give them wisdom. Lord, you know the whole COVID and pandemic thing that's going on. I ask that you be with our frontline workers and our doctors and our nurses and teachers and paramedics and firefighters and police officers and all that have to deal with this strange and different time. Lord, I thank you that we are 1 week closer to getting back to normal. And I thank you and praise you for that. So Father, as we continue in prayer all day long, I ask that you would hear our prayers, that they wouldn't be empty and hollow, but Lord, that they would come from our hearts. Help us to be in prayer 24/7 all the time. So Father, I thank you so much for all that you've blessed us with and greeted us with, and given us just so much so much blessings in our lives. So Father, I ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. Well, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a group of kids just to my right having a great time picnicking and playing games. It looks like they're playing Red Rover, Red Rover. Do you remember that song, Red Rover, Red Rover? We've called so-and-so right over. And that's kind of what I like about walking through the park and enjoying the stuff. So we are going to turn to Mark chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 23, and we're going to go to chapter 3 to verse 6. Oh, I've got to get out of the way of a car. I don't want them to hit me. So here we go. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" And Jesus answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar, the high priest, he David, entered the house of God and ate consecrated bread, which is lawfully only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Another time Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, stand up in front of everyone. Then Jesus asked them, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they remained silent. Oh, sorry about that. He looked all around at them in anger, and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Now, can you imagine? Jesus starts the ministry in Mark. So if we started at chapter 1 in Mark, Jesus goes up and he sees John the Baptist, and John the Baptist heals him. Or not heals him, sorry. John the Baptist baptizes him. And so when he baptized him, Jesus started to look for disciples. He started to look for people that would follow him, that could help him. And I mean, he started, with Peter, and James and John, and they've left their nets and they came to follow him. And we've talked about that in the last few weeks. And then Jesus goes into his ministry and he heals a man with leprosy. And he's starting to draw large crowds, and the Pharisees are starting to notice this. And the Pharisees start not to like Jesus very much, to the point where they start to try to trap him. And they start following him. Isn't it funny that these Pharisees who hated Jesus were following him all around, looking for ways that they could trap him up? But yet they kept following him. And as they were following him, they would hear the words that Jesus would preach. And yet their hearts were still hardened. They didn't listen to Jesus. And so then one day, Jesus is walking with the disciples, and the disciples are getting a little hungry. I mean, they've been walking a long time. And so as they're walking, they're going by this field. And the neat thing is that as they go by this field, they get hungry, and Jesus says, hey, go ahead, grab some grain. And so they grab the grain. Now, I've never had grain by itself. I've never eaten it by itself. But I can't see that it would be all that great to eat. But, to each their own. So as they grab the grain and they put it in their hands and they start to eat it, the Pharisees, and I don't know where the Pharisees came from. I don't know what they were doing. They were probably hiding, from what I can understand or what I can see. They were probably hiding. And not to see if they can catch Jesus. And as they're hiding in the grain fields, they see the disciples, and they see the disciples grab the grain with their hand. They put it in their hand and they start to eat it. Oh, I'm so hungry. Even this grain that it tastes good, even though it hasn't been thrashed or anything, I'm just eating these kernels of grain. I don't even know if it's kernels. And then the Pharisees jump out and they go, aha! Can you imagine the disciples? Because, I mean, they're just new to listening to this Jesus guy. There's disciples, but they also know the law. And the law has basically said, don't you do anything on the Sabbath. There's only certain things you can do. So can you imagine that as they're eating, oh, this is good. And the Pharisees jump out and they go, we caught you. They're like, trying to hide their eating of the grain. Well, can you imagine as they do that, Jesus says to the disciple, or to the Pharisees, have you never read what David did when his companions were hungry and in need? Now, he's basically calling out the Pharisees, because the Pharisees know exactly what David did. The Pharisees, in order to be a Pharisee, they had to memorize the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Had to memorize them. And it's in those that they would have read the stories of David. So they knew exactly what Jesus was saying. And Jesus was calling them out. Because he was saying, have you not read where David, when his buddies, when his companions, when his armies were hungry, did you not see and read that they ate? And not only did they eat on this, they went into the temple and ate consecrated food that was meant for the priests. And it was okay because they were in need. They had to have something to eat. And then he goes and says this, and I love this. He says, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And in one fell swoop, Jesus said, the rules that you so rigorously uphold, that you so religiously want to make sure that everybody obeys, they were made for man, not the other way around. The men were not made to obey these rules. The rules were there to help man live everyday life. The problem with the Pharisees is they put rules over relationships. And Jesus had come to change that. That's why he was working with the disciples. He wanted the disciples to have relationship over rules. And the Pharisees got mad. And they said, I can just imagine they said to themselves, we got to get this Jesus. He is turning things upside down. We can't have a relationship, because if it's about relationship and not rules, we will lose control. It reminds me, when I was in Bible college, we had rules. We had so many rules. We couldn't wear jeans during the week, but we could wear jeans after 5 o'clock on a Friday night till Sunday at midnight. So we could wear them on the weekend, but we had to wear shirt and tie to classes, and we had to wear shirt and tie to chapel, and to breakfast and lunch, but we could wear just a collared shirt to supper. And if we wanted to date somebody, we had to get permission from the dean, from the girls' dean, and from the women's dean of women and dean of men. And all these different things that we had to do. And a few years after I had graduated, and I know you can't believe this, I bucked the rules a little bit. And I would question every rule, every time because every rule that I broke, I got demerits. And if you got 10 demerits in a week, then you got it's called campus, and so you couldn't go anywhere. And and if you got 50 demerits in a semester, then you had to do work. And if you got 100 demerits in a semester, they'd kick you out. And I came mighty close to being asked to leave a couple times for stupid things. For things that a few years later, Marianne and I, after we were married, we went up and we were visiting London Baptist Bible College, and they changed a lot of the rules. And the dean of men said to me, "What do you think, Scott? What do you think of these new rules?" And I said, "I think are these new," and they changed it from rules to standards. And they said, "What do you think of these new standards, Scott?" And I said, they're great standards. They no longer had to wear a certain way and have their hair cut a certain way and different things. And I asked him, I said, so why did this change? And he said, we got reading the Bible, which is really funny for a Bible college professor to say. He said, we got reading the Bible and we discovered that it's not about rules. It's not about doing the check marks. It's not about making sure that everybody is doing the different stuff. And it's more about the relationship that we have with Jesus. It's more about what have I done for Jesus. It's more about how am I living for Jesus. It's not about making sure that all the check marks are done. And then I said, that's great. It's what I've been saying. It's what I said for 5 years while I was here. That's not the rules. I just wish, and I said, well, I just wish you had done this back when I was going here. Anyway, getting back to it, it's not about the rules. It's about relationship. And that's, and I know some of us out here are rule obeyers. Well, if they give us a rule, we got to obey it. Well, if they tell us that we have to do this, we have to do this. If the rule breaks relationship, it's not a very good rule. Let me say that again. If the rule breaks relationship, it's not a very good rule. Now, you can take that and interpret that any way you want. But I will say it one more time. If the rule breaks relationship or relationships, it's not a good rule. And so this is what Jesus is telling the Pharisees. He said, Sabbath, the rule for Sabbath, all these rules that we have for Sabbath, that Sabbath was made for man to relax and to have, not to have the worries and the stresses of the everyday life. It was made for man, not that man had to obey every rule that we had for Sabbath. And he's telling you, here's the thing. Religion takes the simple and makes it complicated. Religion takes the simple and makes it complicated. Relationship with Jesus takes it complicated and makes it simple. The grace of Jesus, the mercy of Jesus takes it complicated and makes it simple. You can't remember the 10 commandments. You can't remember the 300 or 613 rules. Here it is. And I know you're getting sick of this, but here it is. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with everything you have. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus came and took all the complicated religious stuff, poured grace and mercy into it, and made it simple. Well, the Pharisees weren't done questioning Jesus with the breaking of the Sabbath. On another Sabbath, Jesus is in the temple. And a man comes in, and he probably is one of these guys that comes in late. It's a man with a withered hand, and he sits at the back. And Jesus is preaching, and he's talking, and he's saying, all these different things. And the Pharisees said, oh, there's the guy with the withered hand. We've seen Jesus do all these, and Jesus doesn't gather crowds without doing miracles. Let's see what he's going to do with this guy on the Sabbath. And so we get down and says, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they saw these guys, or they saw this guy, and they probably placed him right in Jesus' purview so that they would have to, that Jesus would have to acknowledge it. And what does Jesus do? Jesus says, oh, sorry, I had a bug in my ear. So they watched closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. And we know, oh, I just got to show you guys something. This is really cool. I think the mama ones are getting mad, but I'm just going to show you all the goslings. Yeah, I'm moving away, guys. All the baby. Oh, there they go walking across. You don't get that in church. I don't even know if you saw them. I have no idea how to work this. You don't get that in church. So anyway, so Jesus comes to them and he says to the guy with the shriveled one, "Hey, stand up. Stand up. And stand in front of everyone here." Well, the Pharisees are like, "Oh, we got him now. We got him now. If he heals him, it is forbidden on the Sabbath." Then Jesus asked them, "What is more lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil? To save a life or to kill?" And so what he's saying is, here's a guy, he's got a withered hand. He needs help. He needs my healing. He needs to be restored back to full health. What is worse, me saying no because it's the Sabbath, or me healing him? I want you to let that sink in for a minute. What is worse, to do evil on the Sabbath, which is, if this man is in need, we don't help him because it's the Sabbath, or heal him and break one of the rules? Well, Jesus answers that by healing the man. Let me just get my next page. And it said, after he asked that question, what's better, to do evil or to do good on the Sabbath? To heal or to kill? What's better? The Pharisees didn't answer. First of all, either way that they answered would be wrong. Because if they said, well, no, heal, then they're going against what they were trying to get Jesus accused of, was doing things on the Sabbath that he shouldn't have been doing. And if they said, no, you're not supposed to do anything, so you can't heal him, then the crowd would turn against them and say, what? This rule is more important than the well-being of a person? Isn't this what this rule is made for? Is for our well-being? So they didn't answer. So Jesus, he looked around and he got angry at them. He got angry and he was deeply distressed by their stubborn hearts. Now I want to draw a correlation here. Jesus didn't come just to heal people, just to bring the new word to the Gentiles. He really did. He wanted to change things from within. He wanted the Pharisees to open their hearts. He wanted the Pharisees to grab a hold of the good news. He wanted the Pharisees to be the ones and show the change that Jesus can bring into anybody's life. And that's why he got mad. That's why he said, he looked around at them in anger and deep distress because of their stubborn hearts. It didn't matter that Jesus had showed them who he was. It didn't matter that Jesus said, I'm the Son of God, and here's my resume. It didn't matter that they saw him do miraculous signs and miraculous miracles and heal people and turn water into wine and all those different things. It didn't matter of any of that because their hearts were stubborn. So when he saw that he couldn't change their hearts, he said, stretch out your hand to the man who had the withered hand. And he stretched out his hand. And his hand was completely restored. Can you imagine? Jesus says to the man, stretch out your hand. So he stretches out his hand. And as he stretches out his hand, as he follows in obedience to Jesus, his hand is completely restored. You know, when Jesus tells us to stretch out our hearts, our withered hearts, our hearts that have just gone through a year and a half of pain and suffering and mental distress and all that stuff, Jesus says, stretch it out to me. And as soon as we do that, he will heal us. You may have an issue in your life. You may have something going on in your life. You may have doubts about who God is and why he's doing things because of issues and because of circumstances that are coming into your life. Stretch it out. Stretch it out to God. Allow his healing power to come and to heal you. You know, it says that because of their stubbornness and because of their hardened hearts, the Pharisees went away plotting to kill Jesus with the Herodians. Even when Jesus gave them a chance, they rejected it and threw it away. They rejected it and threw it away. I pray that that's not us today. I pray that that's not you today. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, whether it's the lack of not being able to be with family, or maybe you've had a loved one that has passed and you just haven't been able to share the way you want to share, you haven't been able to grieve the way you wanted to grieve, stretch it out to Jesus. That withered, emotional, mental part that is bothering you, stretch it out to Jesus. Maybe it's a financial thing, because I know there have been some people who have been hit very hard financially, or maybe you know somebody who's been hit hard financially. Have them stretch it out to Jesus. Now, I'm not saying it's instantaneous, but what it is, it's giving Jesus the opportunity to work in your life rather than just closing yourself off. I'm looking forward, so looking forward to getting back with you folks. But this is a pretty good church service. This is a pretty good church sanctuary as well. Just looking around. I like it. Maybe we should gather at the river when we can get back to meeting face to face. Because it's wonderful to worship Jesus and to worship God in nature. God bless you. May he keep you and give you peace throughout this time. I pray that he would be with your family and 1,000 generations and your children and their children, that he would bless generation upon generation for you. That you would acknowledge him, not only acknowledge him, but you would see him. That he runs before you and beside you, he helps you, behind you, pushing you, and he's within you. And he's restoring you. That he's in every aspect of your life, in your weeping and in your rejoicing. As you come and as you go, God is with you all the time. He's with you all the time. Draw on that power this week. God bless. God bless. God bless you this week.